Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio once again Father Emmanuel Oeifo, the priest of the Archdiocese of Abuja and student at Notre Dame University in Indiana, USA. He's just visiting briefly, and I brought him to the studio for us to discuss Christmas, the incarnation, and the imperative of sharing. Our people are forgetting that Christmas is about sharing. That all these things that people go around call Father Christmas, what is it about? It is about sharing. And this has become a major imperative living in Nigeria at this time, where many people are facing the harshest of times. Since I was born, people have never been so poor around me as people are today. It is clear that we cannot carry on business as usual, meaning those who are endowed, those who are privileged, cannot carry on our consumption, our indulgences, our irrelevancies, our partying. We can't carry on as we used to, because we need to live simply so that others may simply live. What is the theology behind giving around Christmas?
I think that the incarnation provides the solid foundation, the solid theology for the Christian imperative to give and to share, because the incarnation simply means that God shared in our human condition.
Okay.
So the
person who began it,
the first generosity is from God.
Okay.
He's the one who decided to become one of us and to share in our human condition, and even to go far beyond where the ordinary human being will go. St. Paul will tell us in the letter to the Philippians, though he was in the form of God,
he did not
count himself equal with God, but emptied himself.
Took the form of a slave.
Took the form of a slave, being born in the likeness of men, and he was even so humble that he went the way of the cross. So that's the solid foundation for the Christian imperative to give, that God has given us everything and given us to the extent of giving us his only begotten Son. That if there's something more that God can give us, he would have given us. So God has given us everything that he could ever give.
So the incarnation is at the root of giving, all giving.
Yeah. So the whole Christmas celebration has to be rooted in the incarnation, that this is God giving himself to us, becoming one of us, taking on our human nature so that we can begin to participate in the life of God. So there is a holy exchange of gifts here. The incarnation is a holy exchange of gifts, that God takes on our human nature so that we might come to share also in his own divine nature. And what that means is that everybody who is a Christian is expected to become a transformed person. That the incarnation is a call to transformation, that you are no longer just human, that there's something of God in each one of us, and that we too are to begin to live the life of Christ in the world. So that's
so because we are beneficiaries of the incarnation, we are beneficiaries of God's supreme giving. If indeed we appreciate that, then we become immediately givers.
That's what basically that's what the incarnation is about. If we appreciate what God has done for us, and St. John will tell us we can love because God loved us first. So the initiative is from God. He's the one who takes the initiative. And having become beneficiaries of God's love, the imperative is to do what? Is to go out and share that love of God with other people.
And talking of Christmas and giving, you recall that the Magi, the wise men from the east, when they were led by the star and they found the child, the infant king, immediately they opened their treasuries,
offered him gifts of gold, frankincense and myrrh.
So, and I used to say that when people encounter the Lord, they don't hoard anymore. They open their treasuries.
But also, at the end of that encounter, what happened? They went back to their country by a different way. Which means transformation. Anyone who encounters Jesus does not return the same way. You are a changed person. But it also shows what? Detachment. They opened their treasuries and did what? And emptied their treasuries for this little child, meaning that they went away in terms of material gifts,
Empty-handed. But
enriched in a new way.
Yes.
There's something that they got from the child which they didn't have,
Yes.
and which was actually the imperative of the journey.
That's
Why did
what
they
they were
set out?
seeking
Yeah.
for. That's
Where
what
is
they
the
were
newborn
seeking
king
after.
of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east, and we have come to do what?
When
To pay
they
him
met
homage.
him, when they met this supreme gift of God, all their aspirations, their longings were satisfied.
Right.
St. Augustine says, the Lord has created us for himself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in him. They met the Lord, and their hearts experienced rest, measure of rest. Just as Simeon, the old man Simeon, at last you can let your servant go in peace.
Because I have set my eyes on the Christ.
Now, so when we receive the supreme, when we encounter the supreme gift of God, something happens in our hearts, and then we become more disposed to give, to be generous.
Blaise Pascal says there's a God-shaped hole in every human person, and God is the one who has created that hole in the human person.
And he's the one that can
He's
feel
the only
it.
one who can feel it. So what human beings are doing is that they do not want God to fill in that hole. They're the ones trying to fill that hole themselves.
And it
with
is a
money,
futile-
with
yeah,
power,
it is
with pleasure.
futile.
It's futile because what it does is that it's insatiable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
All of the things that we usually fill that space with are things that will never satisfy us. It's only God who can satisfy that deepest longing of the human person. So the challenge is to have that openness of heart, but we also need to set out on a journey, like the Magi.
Setting out on a journey. One of the features of a pilgrimage, a journey, is light, traveling light.
Right.
In those days, they used to travel by foot or by camel or whatever. There's a limit to
how much you can carry.
You're traveling by foot from here to Jerusalem or from here to Mecca or something. You can't carry many things. You need water. So you may have to dispense of many things so that you can carry water for survival. But our life has become so comfortable these days. I mean, we have so many gadgets, so many things around ourselves that we don't know how to travel light. I'm sure you have been traveling around wherever the checkout place, the lounges, where people are going to board, where you see Nigerians with excess luggages. Have they ever approached you to help them carry? Yeah, with excess luggages. We are very good at excess luggages. And those are not things that just happen on the outside. It's often what happens outside is often a representation of
what is inside.
Clogged hearts with too much, you know.
But when you listen to the pre-flight instruction, what happens when you're told in an emergency, what did they say you should do? You can't take anything.
You can't take anything.
You can't take anything, right? So even there, we get a sense of that when things get really tough, you are required to just
when the
chips are down, all your 5, 6, 7 luggage.
Just like when the chips are down now, if the Lord calls, and the Lord can call anytime, you go naked.
So we need to learn to live already. Again, it's about having that perspective of the kingdom. That if the kingdom is at the very center, this call to discipleship, if it's at the very center of our existence, we live differently. Living
differently. I am concerned about the poverty that Nigerians have been going through over the last 1.5 years. It is unprecedented. It has never been experienced to this degree before now. I am amazed how many people are surviving. How are people actually surviving? How are the people who are earning less than 100,000, less than 50,000, how they are surviving? It calls for serious understanding among the few that are privileged. One, not to cause scandal. Because when a lot of people are living from hand to mouth, almost destitute quality of life, it can be quite offensive when people flash wealth before them. What do you see that can be done by those who are middle class, who are upper class, those who are doing fairly well in their business, in spite of the present challenges, the obligation they have to society? When we are talking about giving, you know, what about adjustment? Crucial, serious adjustment in our taste, in what we consume, in what we spend money on, so that we can live simply in order to enable many others to simply live.
I think that it's very important. The point you have made is very important. The first corporate social responsibility of the Christian is to work for the transformation of his own immediate environment. And that requires a certain kind of sensitivity, a certain kind of sensibility that absorbs indifference. You can't say you are not.
You cannot be indifferent.
What is happening around me doesn't concern me. It's other people's problem. It's their problem. I mean, it's none of my business. But Francis has always spoken about the globalization of indifference.
That's his very first. His very first document when he became Pope is about the globalization of indifference.
So a Christian should be sensitive to what is happening in the environment where he lives. And it is that sensitivity that dictates, what should I do? What should I do? If I'm successful in my business, how can I make Christmas a bit more enjoyable for people around me? How can I make them experience the joy of the birth of Christ? What do I need to do?
There appears to be in our society certain standards. Okay, you are in the middle class, you have a baby. Okay, it is expected that you will do, what do they call it, outing, and that you will call friends and there will be a big party. Now, must these things be? Can we not, on account of this baby and in thanksgiving to God for this baby, take some money to some orphanage, take some money to some slum, and let 10 babies
experience what my own baby can, I mean, at the snap of my finger, what I can do for my baby, to give a fraction of that to babies that cannot even.
Must I go out to do what we used to do before the economy collapsed? What we used to do, meaning go to some big hall, call my rich friends, same rich friends party, and waste 1 million, 2 million, 5 million. Can't we begin to think of doing things differently?
Absolutely. Everybody needs to think of doing things differently. And this has to do with every single person. For those who have more, yes, a greater responsibility is upon them to cut down. Everybody needs to cut down on this instinct of consumerism, the instinct to want to consume more and more and more, when there are people who don't have the basics, who are barely
scratching
for a living. So it takes sacrifice.
I mean, I thought of this because coming this way this morning, we passed by the slum next door at 6:30, 6:40 a.m. It was not yet fully day. We saw one of these Pantica people who are literally feeding from the dustbin, was picking with bare hands, from the garbage dump to look for what is possible to sell. I saw it, my heart fell. This is 21st century. This is Abuja. This is the city where we hear of hundreds of billions being stolen by individuals. Now, that's in a different class of its own. But also, this is a place where people, like yesterday, Saturday, the number of people who will be having big parties. Like next Saturday, those who will be having big parties. What can we do so as to empower this person who is picking from the literally eating from the gutter? What can we do? And we know that around our cities, thousands of this happen. What can we do to take? We cannot solve all the problem, but we can take this one person out of poverty.
I think that this is where institutions like the church are more helpful, because you need institutions or you need persons with a certain level to help people to help take out from people who have more in order to help those who don't have at the grassroots. Where I went for Mass today, there was a little collection just so that the parish is able to afford 2 or 3 bags of rice that they can distribute for the poor people in the community.
I actually say that I think every parish, every middle-level parish should have a soup kitchen. Even if it is once a month. Here in Terra, we do it once a month. Once a month to be able to feed the poorest of the people in the community. I think every parish, every middle level parish should be able to afford that. To just to collect some, get people collect some money and show that you care.
Okay.
Not just at Christmas time, Easter time, through the course of the year. I mean, if you feed them only at Christmas, so what? First week in the new year, they are hungry. So some ongoing program.
So Benedict XVI says for charity to be effective, it has to be organized.
It has to be organized.
It has to be organized
and sustainable.
Yeah, sustainable.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's where the church has social and moral power to organize this institution, this charity that is institutional, that is sustainable, that can continue to provide for the needs of people. Because, and he takes his example from the early Christian community, that charity was organized in such a way that the community was able to attend to the needs of everyone, such that no one was ever in want. And I ask myself, can we as a church today say, even within our own community, no one is ever in want? So it raises moral questions about what does it really mean to be a church if in our own community there are people who are living lives of misery and in a state of destitution. What should we do? And I'm saying what should we do because what challenged me at the place where I went for mass was a little boy who brought 30 naira 20 naira notes and 255 naira notes, and that was his contribution for these 2-3 bags of rice. That a little boy that should be about 5 years old, he brought his 30 naira. That was his own contribution. So, which is why I'm saying it is not. We don't have to wait for people who have the billions. We need to take from them as well. Maybe they can give us 500 million naira, but you can give 5 naira. Bring it. You have 2 cubes of Maggi and you can bring spare one. Why not? You have 2 tins of tomato and you can spare one. Why not? So this has to because that's how you build a sense of detachment, even for little children who are growing up.
And actually, let me say, in our own church, Catholic Church, there's St. Vincent de Paul. They only need to be further empowered. This is the calling of the people in St. Vincent de Paul. They only need to be equipped and empowered to do what they know how to do, to do it better. They don't discriminate who is who. It is whoever is in need. So they give people money for drugs in the hospital to go see doctor. People who are stranded in the city, they give money to return to the village, and so on and so forth. It is one of the things that I don't like is how do they raise money? I stay in front of the church meeting, help the poor. I said it is not dignified. They should have a chunk, meaning they should have a percentage of the collections. They should, because they are doing it on behalf of the church. It is the money of the church, as we know from our tradition, after taking care of the cult of the things on the altar and the priest, it's for the poor. So each church, it is ideal for each church to have some ministry towards the poor in the area. Some churches may be able to do it every week. Some churches may do it only once a month. Some churches do it less. But at least let each church be known doing something for the poor. And particularly at this time, when we're celebrating the incarnation, God's supreme gift for humanity, I think every church, what the name of church, should do something for the poor.
I think that the message is so clear. Everybody should do something. Every church has a responsibility to do something. Every member of the Christian community has a responsibility to do something. And that means cutting down on our own tastes, cutting down on our own expectations, cutting down on our own consumer habits so that others may simply live.
Correct. For me, it is to understand, to bring home the concept of the common good. It is to say, if things are so bad for my neighbors, can I really say I am happy? Can I really say I am comfortable? My comfort should be seen in relation. It's relative to the comfort of the other people.
Person. Yeah.
So we need to. We have built a society that makes this insensitivity, unfortunately, inevitable.
That's one of the great problems of the Pentecost, the prosperity gospel, because the successful Christian judges himself relative to the other in terms of how prosperous he is.
And says that he's blessed by God.
He's blessed by God, which is why he is the beneficiary of all of these good things.
And the other
so
person,
the other
maybe
person, is the devil, or maybe it's ancestral problems or whatever.
That's his business.
That's his business. But I show that God really loves me to the extent that I see that I am 100 times better than other people.
How wrong?
How can that be a gospel?
I mean, but it is. But there are people who believe it, and then you ask yourself, the people who believe it, do they read the Bible? Do they know the gospel of Jesus Christ? Or do you just listen to half-baked preachers? Do you know the gospel of Jesus? So clearly, this whole concept of globalization of insensitivity, one of the dimensions of it is that we are now living in this country, Nigeria, we are now living in our little prisons. Abuja, for example, is a kind of human being that can live in Asukoro, that can live in Maitama, that can live in Use. And then there are other human beings that live in...
condemned to...
to the slums all around. The slums are all over Abuja. And some is only a wall separating the highbrow area from the slum, like Asokoro. Now, you ask yourself, if the common good means anything to us, shouldn't we change this? You see, there was always poverty in many parts of the world. But in this country, by the time I was born, there were no wars. So the poor people and the rich people lived together, and so the poor person benefited from the food that came from the rich person. Now the poor person has no access. So estates are walled, and within estates, the buildings are walled. So even the poor people within one estate cannot hope to find food from their neighbor because they can't have access to their neighbor. Now this is a very serious issue. Meaning we have put up structures in the society that actually segregate people. Within the same estate you segregate, then between the estate and the slum there's segregation.
And that's because people don't want to see what's happening around them. What's the basis of all of the walls that you put?
They will tell you, Father, security.
Well, what's making you insecure?
You're well.
Because you have taken the person who should be your source of security out of the estate.
Yes.
You have walled them off.
Because if they were living nearby, they would have been your source of security.
Yeah. People went out of their homes without shutting their doors, without locking their doors.
People have forgotten what is called human security. Your neighbors are your best security. But we think it's the iron doors.
Because when you wall your house, you tell people that there's something of treasure here, which you are guarding and protecting. So people would want to come and see what that thing is. Whether you allow them or not, they know how to find access to that. So it's prophetic imagination. How do we imagine a society,
a different
kind of society where the rich and the poor can live side by side?
I mean, in places where I have mentioned this, people it's like it is what we have, the structure we have is as if it's inevitable. And I say it's not inevitable. It can be
because
different.
Even societies that are older than Abuja as a city is 40 years old.
Yes.
So they built societies in such a way you can see all of the skyscrapers, but you will see flats around for 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom for the poor people, for the middle income people to live side by side, people who can live in the skyscraper. So
you know what we did in Abuja? When we were about to have one international event, we walled off. We walled off the slums on the way to the airport, so that our visitors would not see them. But the walls were not tall enough. Visitors were still able to see them. I mean, it's all that money spent for those walls would have been used to help some of the people that live in the slums. But we chose to wall them off rather than address the destitution. Yeah. So on this note, I'll be bringing this program to an end. I've been speaking with Father Emmanuel Oeifo, and we're speaking about the incarnation and the imperative of generosity, the imperative of sharing, that all of us, if we take this Christmas seriously, that we live simply so that others may simply live. We make sacrifices so that others may have a little to live on. And may the Lord inspire all of us. May the Lord inspire church leaders. May the Lord inspire political leaders so that we may begin to address the structures that have put people down to this level of destitution that many are in today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.